positive notes on Vietnam's economic performance in 2021. And later on, Vietnam on course for pre-COVID economic growth in 2022. Welcome to Bizline. I'm Hoàng Hằng. Now, in the last episode of 2021, we would like to review Vietnam's economic performance throughout the entire year. 2021 has been a year with ups and downs for Vietnam's economy as the fourth outbreak of COVID-19 has swayed economic developments of the country. Although the virus has followed a far more severe course than expected, the economy has sailed through the storm and outperformed expectations. In particular, GDP regained positive growth in the fourth quarter after a decline in the third quarter due to the adverse impact of COVID-19 on production and business activities. Meanwhile, the country already reached its trade turnover target of $600 billion by November and attracted a significant amount of FDI capital. These indicators have proved the resilience of Vietnam's economy amid the coronavirus pandemic. Let's find out more about Vietnam's outstanding economic performance in the following clip.
Vietnam entered 2021 with solid fundamentals and policy buffers. In 2020, the country was one of the economies in the Asia-Pacific region most resilient to the shock waves from the global COVID-19 pandemic. Economic growth was strong in the first half of 2021, with GDP in the second quarter of 2021 rising by 6.6% year-on-year. However, the fourth outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic with the Delta variant has hit the country hard, leading to disruptions in production and business activities. GDP suffered a sharp decline in the third quarter of this year by 6.17%, the first time the economy had negative growth in a quarter since 2000 due to lockdowns.
That's the biggest contraction since you have national accounts in Vietnam, so maybe for the last 50 years. 6.2% means that people have been losing jobs. And if you're looking at the official numbers by the government, over 60% of people have been impacted, losing jobs or seeing a decrease in labor income in the third quarter. So it's been a big shock.
However, stepping into the fourth quarter, GDP growth reversed with numerous positive economic indicators. Economic activities resumed in various fields, supporting the country's recovery. Businesses have sped up their production for the year-end. According to the General Statistics Office, the index of industrial production of the first 11 months of this year increased by 3.6% year-on-year, higher than 3% of the same period in 2020. In addition, despite the pandemic, the country still saw an outstanding amount of foreign direct investment or FDI inflows of $677.3 million, increasing by 38.1% over the same period last year. Notably, export and import activities are still puzzling, contributing to trade turnover surpassing this year's target of $600 billion. This resulted in a trade surplus of $225 million during those previous 11 months. Such strong foreign investment and current account surpluses have strengthened external resilience. Meanwhile, major fiscal and monetary indicators such as inflation rates, interest rates, and exchange rates have been stable and kept under control.
It is our honor to connect with Dr. Lê Duy Bình, Managing Director of Economica Vietnam, to give further analysis on Vietnam's economic indicators in 2021. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what are your comments on the economic scene with these indicators and what are the highlights?
The economy of Vietnam in 2021 has witnessed a lot of up and downs in terms of economic growth and in terms of the sentiments of the market as well. You see that at the beginning of the year, the economy was going quite well and was leading even in Southeast Asia in terms of economic growth. But then the economy got contracted due to the outbreak of the fourth wave of the pandemic. and then after that it recover again. So we have witnessed a lot of different sentiment in the last 11 months. The export and import of Vietnam is still growing, and it is growing at a record number, and is now reaching a new record, and probably that it can reach 650 billion for the whole year. And in addition to that, the FDI continue to flow into the country. And in the first 11 months, economic growth was also fewer by this FDI growth with the amount of about 26.5 billion US dollar. And all of this is backed by a very good foundation that is stable macroeconomic, and with the inflation under control, the budgetary deficit is under control, the foreign exchange rate is also under control, and all this constitute a very good foundation for Vietnam economy in 2021, despite all the difficulties that we were witnessing. So in addition to that, we can also see that after the pandemic is more or less controlled, and private sector investment is also rebounding. So these are the positive signals if you wanted to look at the bright side of the economy in 2021.
What do you think have been the main growth drivers for Vietnam's economy this year?
The most important driver is the strong rebound of the global economy. The strong rebound of the global economy has a very important impact on Vietnamese economy. As you can see that Vietnamese economy is an open one. And import and export, or other words, foreign trade, has been increasing over the last few decades. And it is now about double of the Vietnam GDP. And now in 2021, this growth rate has not been stored, and it is still growing despite the pandemic. So the global strong demand for Vietnamese export and also the supply for Vietnamese export have helped to fuel the growth in Vietnam, even at a very modest level until now in 2021. And the other one, the other driver, we can see that the FDI inflow in Vietnam, despite the pandemic, is also very important driver this year in 2021. And the FDI growth has been increasing in the different sectors, especially in the manufacturing sectors, and also in energy, and also in some of science and technology, and also in properties development. So this kind of investment by FDI also contribute to economic growth of Vietnam in 2021. So these important drivers have been extremely useful for Vietnam to sustain positive economic growth in this year. All of these important drivers has been enabled by a macroeconomic condition that is stable, and it has been backed by the very strong and very firm actions by the governments, and also by the business community and by the people in implementing an unprecedented vaccination program that we didn't see it before.
Regardless of the negative impact of the pandemic, foreign businesses decided to expand their operations in Vietnam by pouring more money into their existing projects in the country.
If everything goes well, I expect that construction will start right after Tet next year, and that the new factory will be complete by the end of 2022. And this will double our capacity in Vietnam. It will also double the number of staff.
Living with COVID, as Resolution 128 stimulates, is a crucial condition for quick economic recovery next years. We are planning to double our investment. One integral part of the overall investment is the new state-of-the-art medical device factory on our existing land, where we will start the construction soon, so that the investment of the first phase will have around $10 million.
In November alone, registered FDI capital increased by 71.2% against the previous month. Generally, in the first 11 months of this year, Vietnam attracted $26.5 billion of registered FDI capital, equivalent to the figure of the same period last year. This indicates the confidence of foreign investors in the Vietnamese market.
There are a lot of things that are positive about Vietnam's economy. The reason that for all the reasons that foreign investors were interested in Vietnam before, those reasons are still there. Vietnam has had one of the fastest rates of economic growth of any nation in Asia, and there's no reason that that's not going to continue moving forward in the future.
I think this resilience will also show in the future. The vaccination program, I think, went through faster than many of us had anticipated. The latest business climate index from Eurochan showing a small, not a very high lift, but a small lift in attitude. And I think it's because what we are very much looking at right now is Vietnam getting serious about green energy investments.
Among 18 sectors foreign investors pour money into Vietnam, manufacturing and processing attracted the largest amount of capital in the period, accounting for about 53% of total registered capital.
Despite the pandemic, Vietnam still attracted a significant amount of FDI with many large projects. What factors have helped maintain and improve Vietnam's attractiveness in foreign investors' eyes?
Macroeconomic stability, social stability, that is number one objective in these factors for Vietnam to attract foreign investors. And secondly, Vietnam is also a huge market. And in addition to that, continuous and ceaseless effort by the government in improving the business environment, in improving laws and regulations, making Vietnam more attractive in terms of investment climate, in terms of regulations, in terms of institutional capacity to attract more and more investors. We also see that the infrastructure in Vietnam is being improved. And we can see the improvement in roads, in airport, in expressways is also showing that the government of Vietnam and also the business community is very committed in improving the very important factors to attract more and more investment into Vietnam and to promote more and more investment in Vietnam. And other things, we can also see that the labor, it is young and talented, and the people, and especially the younger generation, is getting in more and more well educated, and they are also more skilled. They are more adaptable to new technology. Of course, we can see that Vietnam is 100 million consumers market. So for investors also see that as a potential market for their investment. And another factor that is very important, that Vietnam is very committed to reforms, very committed to opening up the economy. It is now members of 17 different free trade agreements. All of these open new market for Vietnam. So these are very important factors that for foreign investors when they are looking for a destination to put their money.
Vietnam is aiming to attract more high-quality FDI, focusing on green and eco-friendly projects. How can Vietnam facilitate foreign capital attraction in such sectors in the coming time?
Most recently, you can see that under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP26, the government of Vietnam already stated very clearly that it would aim at the target of net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Such a clear and strong statement shows that there is a strong public support of green growth. So in order for Vietnam to be even more attractive, it's important that regulation must be changed. Further regulation must be changed in support of green growth in Vietnam. Policy need to be changed in support of green growth in Vietnam in order to come up with a new incentive system in support of green investment in Vietnam, both by foreign investors and also by domestic investors. So regulation change and policy change is the first important factors. In addition to that, there would also be change in the different policy in terms of land, in terms of human resources, in terms of financing mechanism here in Vietnam, greener investment will receive a better financing mechanism. So credit or government support will be regulated under the rule that those who are more supportive of green will receive the resources. So all this kind of change with the mindset of the people, with the mindset of the government, and would also lead to the change in the mindset of the investors. And for this one, we believe that there would be more and more foreign investment that will go to the green sectors into Vietnam.
According to the latest data of the General Department of Customs, in the first 11 months of 2021, Vietnam's exports reached $301.73 billion, up by 18.3% over the same period last year, while the country's import of goods reached $300.27 billion, up by 27.9%. As such, the country's total import-export turnover already exceeded 2021's target of $600 million as of November.
Các cái hiệp định thương mại tự do thế hệ mới cũng đã bắt đầu phát huy cái hiệu quả và đã đóng góp vào cái việc là đẩy mạnh cái tăng trưởng xuất nhập khẩu, thì chúng ta cũng vừa thấy cái điều này nó thể hiện ở những các cái con số mà kim ngạch với các cái thị trường, đặc biệt là những thị trường mới tham gia trong các cái hiệp định thương mại tự do, ví dụ như là Canada, Mexico, Peru, là có những cái tăng trưởng nó rất là rõ. Bên cạnh những thị trường chúng ta có cái kim ngạch xuất khẩu lớn như là Hoa Kỳ, như là Trung Quốc, rồi EU, thì chúng ta thấy rằng các khu vực khác, kể cả như là Mỹ Latin hoặc là khu vực châu Đại Dương, thì chúng ta cũng đều đạt được cái mức tăng trưởng xuất nhập khẩu ở hai con số.
Another positive signal is that the structure of exports has changed. High-tech sectors such as phone, computer and machinery manufacturing replaced labor-intensive ones to contribute largely to the country's exports.
Chúng ta cũng duy trì được một cái mức tăng trưởng nó đều khắp ở hầu hết các ngành hàng cũng như là các thị trường. Chúng ta thấy rằng là cái nhóm hàng về công nghiệp hiện nay vẫn chiếm cái tỷ trọng phần lớn trong cái hoạt động về xuất nhập khẩu, với cái tỷ trọng là lên đến độ khoảng 86%. Tuy nhiên thì chúng ta thấy là nhóm mặt hàng nông sản vẫn có cái tăng trưởng rất là tốt. Và mặc dù trong điều kiện dịch bệnh cũng như là khó khăn về các vấn đề về chi phí vận tải, nhưng mà cái tăng trưởng về xuất nhập khẩu của nhóm hàng nông sản chúng ta thấy cũng duy trì.
It is expected that Vietnam will achieve a total trade turnover of $660 billion this year. According to the Ministry of Industry and Trade, this will help Vietnam join the list of the top 20 economies in terms of international trade.
Now, regardless of the pandemic, Vietnam still broke the record of trade turnover of $600 billion as of November. What do you think are the contributing factors for such record?
It is attributable, firstly, to the rebound of the global demand, rebound of the global economy, and especially in the economies that is the main export and import market for Vietnam. For example, like the EU, the US, Japan, ASEAN, and partly China. The global demand and the ability to adapt, the ability to respond to this demand are the two important drivers for us to achieve this very high growth in foreign trade for this year. And of course, it's also backed by the effectiveness of some of the free trade agreement this year, for example, like the EVFTA. That is very important contributors in opening some of the new markets for Vietnam. So that is also very important factors as well. So we see that it's not only from the market side, the ability to respond to the market, but the efforts by the government, both the central level one and also the provincial government one and the business community has been contributing to this growth in foreign trade in Vietnam in 2021.
How do you think this will contribute to economic recovery of Vietnam next year?
We still see that foreign trade import and export will still be an important contributors to economic growth in Vietnam, especially given the fact that domestic consumption and retail in Vietnam is declining even for this year, and we don't expect that it would be strongly rebound in 2022. And foreign trade and export will also contribute to sustain and even improve the manufacturing sectors and to ensure that they would have enough job to be provided to the labor job market. So if we leveraging for the growth of the domestic sectors, it can even have to improve the competitiveness of the Vietnamese domestic private sectors, improve the competitiveness of Vietnamese economy. It can also contribute a lot to the positions of Vietnam in the global and regional market.
I believe Vietnam can roar again like a tiger. I think it's speaking about a big fiscal package like it was done in many other countries. The beauty for Vietnam, you can do it because Vietnam has fiscal space. Maybe they can reduce taxation or collect less revenues from people, and that way people have more money to spend. So I think that's a short-term policy recommendation that I would have for the government.
My recommendations to the Vietnamese authorities is keep doing the vaccine rollout. Vaccine receptivity is very high in Vietnam, and we're seeing that countries that get to the 70, 80, 90% of double vaccinated are in a much better position to open up their economies. I would continue their investment in infrastructure, especially around power, especially around port space, especially around road connectivity. These are all things that foreign direct investors look at when they look to invest in Vietnam.
It's that there needs to be direct consultation with stakeholders, which is the people affected by these policies. And they need to sit down with businesses and say, hey, look, if we do A, B, or C, how is that going to impact people's mobility, people's supply chain, people's idea to serve their customers? All these things are very important in terms of creating and keeping the flow of economic activity moving.
My expectation and my hope is that the government will stick to the living with COVID concept. Of course, we still need to be careful, all of us, in our daily lives. It's just one of the ways to normalize the situation as it is.
What do you think will be the main drivers for Vietnam's economic recovery and GDP growth next year?
Obviously, global demand for Vietnamese export product will be still an important drivers for economic growth for Vietnam in 2022. We expect that domestic consumption will be contributing an increasingly important part in the economic growth of Vietnam in next year and even also in the years to come. And this need to be supported by a very strong job policy, employment policy, in order to provide the people with more jobs. We also expect that government spending will also be faster with the public investment will be disbursed at the faster rate with more efficiency in 2022. So public spending, government spending, and private sector spending will be increased in the 2022. We expect that this will be another important drivers for economic growth in 2022. And all of this need to be backed by a strong policy, a strong commitment towards economic stability, macroeconomic stability. So with all this, it can also be supported additionally by a well-designed, well-calculated economic design package that the government and the National Assembly is considering at the moment. If this economic stimulus package is well designed and is implemented effectively, it can also be another driver for economic growth in 2022.
What is your forecast of Vietnam's economic growth this year and also scenarios for 2022?
With some of the figures that has been released by the government and also by the General Statistics Office, we can be conservatively optimistic about the economic outlook of Vietnam in 2022. And we see that there is some foundation for that, for economic stability, the rebound of the private sector investment, the rise in import and export, and the inflow of the FDI, and also the performance of the stock market. And all this promise conservatively optimistic views about the economic growth of Vietnam in 2022. It needs to be founded on the measures to control the pandemic in the coming months and also in 2022. Despite the recovery of some of the business sectors, many are still unable to recover until now, and many of the workers are still facing difficulties and they are still not being able to be back to the job market. So all of this need to be addressed, and in order to make the economy can utilize the employment to its fullest, in order for the business to be all back to operation, and new investment will be implemented, and the confidence of the domestic and foreign investors will be fully restored, and all this can also be contributing to higher economic growth scenario of Vietnam in 2022. And we can be hopeful that economic growth in 2022 would be much higher than 2021.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
The pandemic is not over, but Vietnam's economy is more resilient and has proved its adaptability to market fluctuations and unpredictable external factors. Vietnam has taken decisive steps to limit both medical and economic fallout. Successful containment and timely policy support have helped Vietnam jumpstart its economic recovery. This has consolidated positive sentiment of experts and investors in Vietnam's economy in the medium and long term, that Vietnam will regain its pre-pandemic GDP growth and continue to be an important player in the global supply chain. As 2021 draws to a close, experts believe that the worst is behind us, and Vietnam will start back on the road to a genuine recovery next year. And that wraps up the last episode of 2021. From our team here in Hanoi, we hope 2022 will bring you peace, health, and happiness. And don't forget to join us next year for more economic news from Vietnam. In the meantime, you can log on to vtv4.vtv.vn or download our mobile app VTV Go on App Store and Google Play for a lot more. Thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year.